to episode number 4 of The Paper Cut, a podcast about books and reading from the Middle East, Africa, and South Asia. I'm going to keep the introduction as brief as humanly possible, or as brief as is physically possible for me, because this is a continuation of episode number 3, where Dina and I discussed The Greater Freedom by Alya Mooro. So this is part 2, and to be honest, I was a little bit hesitant about sharing all of the information that I have been sharing because it's slightly controversial, but I think I'll just keep my introduction to this. Please take everything that is being said on this episode as personal opinions only. It does not reflect the opinions of my community, my country, any other people who might be affiliated with me. These are my opinions and my opinions alone. And we are just using this platform as a way to sound each other out. So I may have said something in the course of the discussion that made it sound like I was speaking on behalf of all Muslims, and I am certainly not going to do that. So if it sounds like I am, I'm not. I was just giving my own opinion, and I guess I just got carried away in the heat of the discussion and made the declarations that I did. If you agree with them, please let me know if you think that you agree with what I have said. And certainly if you disagree with them, which I'm sure so many of you will, I'm also interested to hear, but keep it respectful, please. I'm a crier, so please. Anyways, without further ado, here is part 2 of my discussion with Dina on The Greater Freedom. Someone is always going to disagree with you. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You know, like if you decide to dress modestly, a great example of that conflict is, do you know there's this blogger called Asya?
Yeah.
Who recently took off her hijab.
Yeah.
And she had an interview with another blogger, and Asya was anxious about the fact that she's always going to be known as, first of all, that she's always going to be known for that reason only, that was perceived as a hijabi and then took off her hijab, but she never called herself a hijabi. That's number 1. But number 2 was when she wore the scarf on her head, even though it wasn't a proper hijab, she always would have comments from people saying, you're not wearing the hijab properly. If you're not going to wear it, you might as well not wear it at all. And then she took it off, and then people were like, oh, anti kafra, you know, how dare you, don't you fear God, blah blah blah. And it's like, you're never going to win. You know, she tried to do what looked right, and people still criticized her for it and wasn't good enough. Yeah. And then she tried to do what she wanted to do, and she still got criticized. So you might as well just do what you want.
No, it's so true. Yeah. You're always, no one's ever going to be happy with, like, you know, I was thinking this. Even if you look at, like, not marrying a different race and you just look at marrying someone from your own country, even if I were to marry an Omani, someone's still going to comment, oh, you married an Omani from the wrong tribe. You married an Omani that's, you know, got this family or that family. So you're never going to get to the right place. So, yeah, you do just have to kind of accept, really, what do you want to do? And then maybe, I think for me, I always just evaluate the 3 closest people to me. So it's usually my mum and my grandparents. I go, okay, what are their actual opinions? Because at the end of the day, I do rely on them, and they depend on me too. And I do care about their opinion. And so, but then I really shouldn't care about anyone else, because unless they're actually providing something for my life, and it's going to be removed once I do something wrong, then it's almost like, why? Yeah. But yeah, going back to actually Asya, her, and as an English or British hijabi who recently took her scarf off. Her name's Dina Tokyo. She thinks she's half Egyptian, half English. And I don't mind all of these hijabis taking off their scarves. Like, it doesn't bother me. And they all start with this thing that they're a modest blogger. But what I don't understand is why you wanted it on in the first place, and then why suddenly just randomly want to take it off. I still don't get to that fact. Yeah. Like, if you wore it some days and you don't wear it some days, I get it, because then it's just a state of fashion. But it was almost like they always wanted to wear it. So where did suddenly you decide that you don't want to wear it? Yeah.
I know a lot of girls did it when they were much younger, and they thought they were so convinced that this was the right way. You know, they were like 15. I remember actually when a couple of my friends did it at school, and they like 3 of them did it like all together. You know, they kind of like egged each other on, and like they supported each other through it, and they wore it together. And when they did it, I think that they had a lot of, obviously they had a lot of support. It's one of those decisions that any family member would support, more or less. But when they came to school with a hijab that week, our Islamic teacher gave each of them like a medal, literally like a prize for wearing it. Or not a prize, it was like a gift or something. And like there was a big not a huge ceremony, but like there was some form of ceremony to it. Like, here is your reward for following the right path and all that kind of stuff. And what's interesting is that 2 of those girls don't wear the hijab anymore.
Give me back that. Go back to school. Take back the award.
And I totally supported their decision to wear it, and I supported their decision to remove it, because they were just kids when they made that decision. At the time, you think you're so grown up, and you think everything you think is so concrete. The only thing that changes as you grow older is you become less and less sure of what you know.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, you kind of become more and more sure of what you believe somehow.
Yeah, you learn your beliefs.
So it's a weird paradox, but like I think that I don't want to like put words in her mouth, but because I know what those girls went through, I feel like I get it. But that's why I never wore the hijab. You know, my family were trying to convince me, and like a lot, of course there's always this pressure to wear a hijab and stuff, and I was like, what if I want to take it off later? It's such a permanent decision. It's like getting a tattoo. That's why I never got a tattoo. You know, what if I want to remove it later?
You might get bored later. You just don't know. And the thing is, like, especially when you're younger, you're like, if I think about the things I thought were a great idea 10 years ago, they're definitely not great ideas today. And but it's true, because Alya mentions it in her chapter about when you're technically Muslim. That technically Muslim term, it really irritates me, because you don't hear it in I'm technically Jewish or I'm technically Christian.
No,
always,
definitely not.
It's always reflected on Muslims. So you don't hear I'm technically Buddhist. Like, I'm half shaven. Like, I don't know. But one of the girls that she interviewed said religion is a vertical relationship between you and whatever you believe in. It's personal. And I think that's so true. And I came to that conclusion this year. I decided, I wasn't working. I didn't know what the hell I was doing in my life. I think I was having like a midlife crisis at 25. And I was just telling my mum, oh, it's the end of the world. I don't want to know. And I couldn't get my thoughts together. And she was like, go pray. Bearing in mind, my mum does not pray. She prays during Ramadan. I'll give her that. And I was like, why are you telling me to go pray? And the thing is, my grandmother's always shouting it down my throat. So I really don't want to do something when someone's forcing me. My mum was like, no, don't go pray for anyone. She's like, Ramadan is coming up. Why don't you make sure you fast the whole month? You don't have to cover up, but dress respectively. And just pray and fast and do it properly. And I was like, but why? Why should I pray? And she was like, okay, don't think of it as a prayer. Think of it as you're going to meditate. You're going to sit down. And she said, make sure you do your Fajr prayer. You sit down in the morning, you know, just do the words that you have to do. Even if you don't understand them properly or you don't believe in them, just do them, get it out of the way. Then sit down there for 5 minutes and just, you know, be great. Like, think about what you're grateful for and think about what you want and use that time and do that 5 times a day. And she said, it's not about actual praying and, you know, you're a Muslim, you need to pray.
Yeah, it's not about going through the motions.
Yeah, you need to go through those emotions. You need to, I think the whole point of prayer as well is that you're committing to something as well. And the minute I started doing it, everything just started to fall into place because my own mindset really got it. And then I understood why my mum was telling me to pray. And so then I just continued doing it because I found it something easy and it helped me gather my thoughts. And then that whole Ramadan, I was like, okay, I decided, it's like, let me actually read the Quran bit by bit. So I created a WhatsApp group. The WhatsApp group's actually called Born Sinners.
I love that.
Like, I pulled together different people. So I have my cousin who's from Oman, but she lives in Holland. She's studying now. Then another boy from Oman, he's like Swahili Omani. Then like a boy from Ibra, who's really like, he's grown up obviously in a completely different environment, but he studied in England. There's an Indian girl who was born in Australia, lived in Oman. My friend from Trinidad who converted to be a Muslim is also on it, and he really wants to know more about the religion. What I was doing each day, I was reading a verse and I'd send it to the group and I'd send my annotations. And then, like, the really religious one would pipe up and tell you exactly what it meant. And he'd say, because a lot of the English translation didn't make sense. So he'd unpick it, and then someone would argue it. And then we'd have, like, a huge debate for the whole night.
Wow.
And by the end of it, like, we didn't finish it, but now we still go back and forth when we have questions about, you know, why do it. And the scarf came up a lot. Why are you wearing a scarf? And do we have to wear a scarf? And where does it actually say you have to wear a headscarf? And it went back and forth. But then I came to the conclusion about most of these. A lot fine was written so long ago that they can't comprehend for today. And a lot doesn't make sense in today's society. And you can't literally follow the Quran. But what you take from it, and everyone analyzes it in their own way, because there were certain parts in the Quran where it said, you know, there was a part where you could understand why you have like ISIS and you have terrorists, because if you interpret it in a certain way, it's saying if people aren't Muslims or whatever, go kill them, go do this. But it's really how you interpret it. And so that's when I came to the conclusion, like, no, I'm a Muslim my way. And like Alya mentions in the book, you know, God is going to judge you. She asked an imam, he said, God will judge you. And you shouldn't really be listening to other people's opinions. And specifically in the Quran, it says you shouldn't judge others and you shouldn't force someone to be a Muslim. You know, you just need to accept them.
Yeah. And I think I loved that section. Probably the one that I loved the most was the chapter about Islam in the stereotype of Muslims and Islam in general. And because she quoted a lot from Scott. What I loved about this book as well is that it was extremely well researched.
So well researched.
So well written. So it was very readable from the first page. She quotes Riza Aslan, who's like a religious historian. And first of all, I want to just like recommend that people go. It's one of my favorite things on YouTube. If you haven't seen it,
I need to see it.
It's a Riza Aslan on Fox News. It's like a really famous, and I'm not gonna say any more than that. Just go watch Riza Aslan Fox News on YouTube. It's amazing. She quotes him where he says, Islam doesn't promote peace or violence. Islam is just a religion, and like every religion in the world, it depends on what you bring to it. If you're a violent person, your Islam, your Judaism, your Christianity, your Hinduism is going to be violent. And that exactly sums up how I feel about every religion. And then he goes on to say that there are, there are Muslims who are violent. There are Christians who are violent. There are Buddhists who are violent. What's happening now with the Rohingya is happening at the hands of Buddhists to Muslims. But then elsewhere in the world, at the very same moment, there are Muslims doing the same thing to other religions. So that in and of itself should be enough for people to understand that the religion itself is not dictating to people what to do with, you know, it's telling them how to live a way of life. And most religions are advocating peace. That's the truth. That's the meaning of, I mean, he says Islam, I don't agree with him specifically when he says Islam doesn't promote peace or violence. I genuinely do think Islam is about peace and harmony, because it's talking about surrendering yourself to God, you know. And I think that other religions do the exact same thing. Judaism does that, Christianity does that, Hinduism does that. It's all about creating a oneness with God. And one thing though that I'm not sure, I agree with you that Islam is a vertical relationship. That's my interpretation of it. But maybe something that Alya doesn't know or wouldn't come up in research, I don't think, is, I don't know if this would come up in research, but our curriculum doesn't teach us that. Our Islamic studies curriculum. Not at all. Yeah. Our curriculum teaches us that when I remember specifically learning, like we had a session in our Islamic class about Islam is 3 components. It's your relationship with God as number 1. Number 2 is your relationship with yourself. And number 3 is your relationship with the society around you. So built into our education system is an idea that you fulfilling your religion, your Islamic duties, is taking care of the community around you. And yes, even that can be interpreted in different ways. But already people have this bias towards thinking that if I want to be a good Muslim, I have to care about other people. And people's interpretation of caring for people can be very different. So we have people in Arab society or in Islamic societies where they call them fa'il khair. Okay, fa'il khair means do-gooder. And do-gooder in other communities can have a negative connotation.
Yeah,
Actually, it's like a overly virtuous, pious, you know, person. But here it's supposed to be a good thing, where it's like literally like, you honestly, usually women calling up nowadays, it's like calling up people that they know that their kids are doing something wrong, and they basically just rat them out. They'll be like, listen, just so you know, your daughter is doing this and she has this boyfriend and she does that, and she just shuts the phone and she's like, I'm a fa'il khair and I'm telling you this is happening. Just shut the phone. She snitches on them. And yeah, so this happens, you know, and they think they're doing their job as a Muslim.
Yeah.
And that they're helping set that person on the straight and narrow. So that is the real challenge, you know. That's a real challenge. And I not these days I don't try and argue with people about this stuff anymore, because I realized, once you realize that people don't intend to be malicious, they're not going to do something, even like a fundamentalist Christian or Muslim or anyone, they're not trying to be harmful. Actually, they're trying to do what they think is the right thing. That is the people that, nobody's trying to be malicious here, you know. It just so happens that you might interpret it as being malicious, and it might be harmful. Actually, like the end result is harmful. Honor killings and beatings and stuff like that. People don't, their intentions are different. So once you realize that, and then you if you try and like confront them from the angle that you're doing something wrong, and I need to tell you why you're wrong, they're not going to listen to you. So the other day I was having a conversation with a family member, and I was watching, she was showing me a Kuwaiti blogger, again, another Kuwaiti blogger, but this was another guy. He was, he's very effeminate, and I'm pretty sure he's gay.
Yeah.
And people know that I think he's gay, but he never outright says it, but he's extremely effeminate. He's very, very well known. He's got millions of followers and everybody loves him. I mean, I like him. He's funny, and he's really like, his cause is like women's empowerment. And he thinks that women being feminine and owning their womanhood and all that kind of stuff is very important for women to sort of succeed in life and all that kind of thing. This family member showed me this person and was like, who is this guy? Do you know who this is? And I was like, oh yeah, his name is Badr something. I couldn't remember what his name was, but I was like, I think his name is Badr something. And she was like, what is this? He's acting, is he gay or what? I was like, I don't know. Actually, he never said if he was gay, but I think he might be. And then she was like, this is crazy. This is outrageous. He's so famous. I'm like, yeah, people really love him. You know, I like him. He's really cool. And then she was like, what do you mean you like him? I was like, what? Listen to what he's saying. The stuff that he's saying is actually really positive and uplifting and inspiring. Yeah. And then she was like, and I was like, if you look at his Instagram account, a lot of people we know follow him and they like him too. And she was like, I don't agree with this. And I was like, why? And she was like, because if people like him become famous and he's very obviously like openly gay, then that becomes normal. And then I was like, okay. And then what happens? And then she was like, and then people are okay with it. I was like, okay. And then what happens?
It's just like, then your kids become gay.
Yeah. And then she was like, it just makes it seem like it's okay to be gay. I'm like, okay, and then what happens? I'm just trying to like lead her to like, what is the problem here, you know? And then she's kind of confused, like, yeah, what does happen actually? And she couldn't tell me. So I didn't push the point any further than that. And sometimes that's all you need to do, is just leave people to think. Like, if you're trying to undo like years and years and decades of conditioning, you can't do it in one conversation. Sometimes you just need to plant a seed and then let people you know, and people are smart, they're not stupid, they'll come to their own conclusions eventually. But yeah, that was very interesting.
Yeah.
I think that is a sort of arena that's going to take many, many more generations to.
Yeah, I'd love to see, like, can you imagine the day that a Middle Eastern country says gay marriage is legal?
I have I'm willing to bet that what country do you think is the first one that will allow it?
I reckon.
Oh, hey there. This is Fatma. I had to go back in time and censor Dina's answer because obviously the conversation got out of control a little bit. I kind of forgot where we were. And yeah, had to censor that. But don't worry, her answer's in safekeeping. I've archived it, and in 100 years' time, I will release it. I'll obviously still be alive because of medical advances and going through episode number 10,000. And yeah, we'll all enjoy a good laugh at her response.
They can't stop us from how we dress.
Yeah, true. They can't.
But what's then frustrating is, but you can stop a woman if they're walking around with a low cut top and you don't like the look of it. But why can't you stop a man if he's in like the tightest pants and the tightest top?
That's so
with
true.
Very well done eyebrows and makeup on. You can't stop him. But then maybe they should make that.
And but by the way, we have like trans people here. Like
no one that's what I find weird is how that no one like comments on it. Everyone just accepts it.
Yeah.
And acts normal.
Yeah.
I kind of want to do a social experiment and go out dressed as a Wani man. Put on a dish dasher. Like,
just to see
and
what?
Put on like a massage. I just want to see the reaction because I think you'd still be able to tell it's a woman underlying. But I want to see how men will react. And how women will react. Because if we see a gay person and we can tell that they're gay, like how do we react to that? Do we ignore them? Do we stare at them? Do we point at them? So what if they saw a woman doing it the other way around?
So I had a really interesting interaction once. Last year I was doing Souq al-Sabt.
Yeah.
So Souq al-Sabt is like a Saturday market that happens every winter season. And I was participating. I was a vendor and I had a charity stall. And I was raising money for Yemen. And anyway, the first day I was like really anxious and my mom came to help me. And my mom is very traditional and very conservative. But, I mean, she lived all over the world. She lived in New York. She lived in France. She lived in Vienna and traveled all over the place. But at her core, she's, like, very conservative. Yeah. This couple came to our table, and they were European. And it was very obvious that one of the couple was trans. And I'm not sure which way it was, if it was a male transitioning to female or the other way around. I'm not sure. So they came to our table and they were like looking at our stuff and whatever. And then they picked a couple of things and they went, and it was like one of our first sales of the day. And I was like really confused because I had like a bit of a like moment of like cognitive dissonance. So I was looking, I was like, am I in Oman for me to be seeing this something so openly here? And did I just see that, or what was happening, you know? So I looked over to my mom and I was like, Mom, was that a man or a woman? Who I didn't understand. And then my mom looked at me and she was like, man, woman, cat, dog, who cares? They bought something.
See, and that's how we should all be. Like, why do you care?
Exactly. And I was like, and that shocked me even more. And I was like, my mom is telling me, and my mom is the one who would be normally have like some kind of bias against. I was like, okay, maybe I should be more like my mom in this case. Like, why do I care?
I feel like Muslims have more problems with gays or lesbians than they do with trans. I don't know.
They
why.
do actually.
Yeah. I think it's because
No, because even I've had people tell me that like trans, like some people, a lot of Muslims and believe that trans people, they're more willing to accept the idea that a trans person is born that way and it's in their nature to be that way, but they're not willing to accept the idea that a gay person is gay because they're born that way.
That's so weird.
Yeah, because and there's actually interestingly enough, there is a court ruling in Abu Dhabi which approved a sex change operation.
Oh wow.
Yeah, for I can't remember which way the operation went. I think it was female to male or male to female.
Oh, wow.
And there has been a fatwa in Egypt, out of an Egypt Al Azhar University or mosque, where they basically said it wasn't like 100% that they are on board with the idea, but more or less that it's not as black and white as people think, basically, in the Islamic world. Like, people always imagine that the Muslim world is very unaccepting of this, but if you look at scholarly like sources, and in Iran as well, there was a fatwa that says that basically, not, I don't want to say condoning, but saying that a trans a person identifying as like born as a female and identifying as male can be acceptable in some circumstances.
I find that so odd.
Yeah. And this was in the 80s. It's not even like recently.
Oh, I don't. Isn't it down to like, haven't they, because they've done studies, like psychological studies that show that people can be born into the wrong body, like the mind.
Yeah.
But then I just don't get how that works. It doesn't work if you're like gay.
That's the thing. Like, why do you make that? Can you make that leap, but you can't make that leap?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me. And I think it just goes down to biology.
Isn't that also, like, if you look at it from a religious perspective, in the Quran it says you can't be gay, but there's nothing in the Quran to say you can't change to be a man or a woman. So my thing with that whole gay thing, I don't know the exact wording is in the Quran, but I think I remember it says something about how a man cannot be with a man, but it doesn't say about a woman cannot be with a woman. I can't remember the exact wording, so I was like, so what? Muslims can be lesbians. I just can't be gay. I think I just pulled it up in a mosque. I love going so I never go to the mosque, but once in a while in the mosque in like my hometown, they have these like sessions on a Friday where like the imam comes and you can question him. And I always try and find out when he's coming. And some of the girls I know from the mosque don't like it when I come.
Because you ask them hard questions.
I ask such hard questions. And you can hear the guy shaking. Because I will keep digging and digging. And no one goes that far. But he asks for it. Ask me any question.
Yeah.
Hit me with it. And that was one he couldn't answer.
That's his job, man.
Yeah, that one I remember about the gay thing was, well, no. I mean, if they say it one way, they mean it for the other way too. I said, no, it's not specifically saying it in there. And everything you show me in the Quran is detailed. So unless you want me to be vertical on this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I've never really looked at though I know that basically the main reference to homosexuality in the Quran is through Qawm Lut, which is like Lot. Lot was a prophet, and where he was like sent, there was a lot of homosexuality. So those are the main references in the Quran, and honestly I don't remember. Basically the story of all the prophets are that they were sent to places where there were bad people doing bad things, and that's why they needed a prophet, a messenger to come and set them straight, you know. But there is some debate, I think, about whether or not it was the homosexual acts that were bad, that were the thing that he was being sent to fix.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
True.
Again, it's just a matter of interpretation, I guess.
Well, it is, because like when I've asked before, if one of these things they say in religion, in Islam, is whoever you're meant to marry is kind of written for you or whatever, then, if you're meant to get married, you know, it's written. So then if I'm meant to get married and it's written and I'm meant to be gay. Yeah.
And if you are that way, I mean, it's just a fact. It's happening.
Yeah.
So.
Then obviously, and then I'm like, God wanted that. Like, no. God gave you your life so you can make your own decisions. Yeah, but. Like, there's always, you go back and forth. Let's not get into it. But.
It's true.
But that's on the point that Alya mentioned when she was talking about those lesbian girls. And I was actually speaking to this girl in particular, this Omani that's gay, recently. And I never knew the struggle she had when she was younger. I do remember her going through the struggles when she was younger because her sister came out first. And then she was trying to uphold this thing. Okay, no, I'm going to try. I'm going to do it for my mum because her mum only had 2 girls. And my whole thing, even when I was younger, is how are you going to give your mum grandchildren? But, so she really tried for a long time, and then she was only telling me recently how she really struggled with her mental health because she just couldn't force herself to be with the guy. She just didn't like anything about it. But and the thing is, actually, she's a bit like me. She wants to live in Oman. She's desperate to move back here. Every time she leaves here, she like bursts into tears. She just doesn't want to leave. And I get her. And like our English friends don't get us. But we're so desperate to be here. Yeah. And then our Omani side, like, why do you want to be here?
Yeah, I'm like, why?
Yeah, exactly. And no one gets us, and we're stuck in limbo. So I was talking to her, and she was like, but I find it so hard because, you know, she does come from a well-known family, and she has to be so careful. And she says that my female cousins know. She says I won't even tell my guy cousins who I'm close to because I know their reaction isn't going to work. And obviously her parents know. And I kind of said to her, I said, well, you kind of have the easy option because if you're seen everywhere with a girl here, you're going to look better than me if I was seen everywhere with a boy here.
No one would ever say anything.
No one would ever know. I said, you could live with the girl and no one would say anything because, you know, there's no rule to say 2 girls can't live together.
But you can't be open about it.
You just can't. That's it. And I said, so the only thing you have to hide is that you can't sit there kissing each other in public. I said, you could probably hold hands in public. I mean, if 2 girls, no one's going to say anything. but the rest you need to keep private. She's like, yeah, but I want to marry her. I was like, well, and then like if she wants to have a baby, then she won't be able to do it. And I always said like, and then it depends if she stays on her British passport. You know,
That's really complicated. So
she's a really complicated situation because she's really hating her life in England at the moment. She's so depressed and she's ready to give it all in. She's got a girlfriend at the moment, but she's so desperate to be in Oman. So she kind of has to make the decision.
So that's what I was saying. Like, there are people whose choices in life are, or the path that they want to go down in life are actually contrary to what their society says. So like I said, my lifestyle is not contrary. I like to read, you know, and my profession is not something that's causing a lot of like it's not causing any difficulty for people to accept. So I don't have to face any issues, but there are people who want to live this life. Like they are gay and they want to be married and living in Oman at the same time.
Yeah.
That person is going to have to be like a pioneer. If that ever becomes like a possibility. I honestly don't see it because it is a crime. I'm just saying the law says it's a crime, not me.
That's okay. The law. Yeah, so technically, even if she were to publicly have a wedding and everything,
you can't.
She wouldn't even be able to have a wedding.
No, it's literally legally not allowed.
And
it's not that it's not allowed; it's a crime.
Yeah, and you just can't change it because for you, in order to change that and to live that freely, you'd have to change your whole entire, almost religion.
Like there are. Like, let's look at the U.S. as an example. Their civil rights movement for gay rights went through decades before, and people died. People got like physically abused. People, you know, went through all that kind of struggle to be able to get to the point of where they are now. So you'd have to replicate that whole, you know, process, struggle, and everything all over again in other places. And I guess the world is becoming more and more tolerant as time goes on. More countries are accepting this. As it stands, there are, I don't know how many, 20 or so countries that legalized gay marriage.
It's got a lot better.
And it's happened in a relatively short space of time.
But then, okay, what would happen if she got married in England, came to live here with her wife, and then while she was in England, she decided to get a sperm donor, and she was pregnant when she came here. Then can she live here? But she'd have to live here on her British passport.
Yeah, but the problem is that child could technically still be considered an illegitimate child and would face a lot of challenges.
Talking about like illegitimate children, there's actually, I read it online, I was actually reading about, I think the like Islamic law or whatever. If a child doesn't, if you're in a Muslim country and the child doesn't have a father or whatever, you don't know, the child is actually known as an alien. Yeah, I found this somewhere online. What? So even because there's really rare circumstances, like in Oman, where a woman's been raped, or you know,
and they don't know who
they don't know where the father's gone, and she has that baby. The child is known as an alien and doesn't belong anywhere.
What the hell? Not even to the mom?
No, because it's like the mom can have it, but the baby's never gonna have a passport. Doesn't get a surname. It's literally, and that's what they call it. They call it an alien. Like, can you?
That is so messed up.
They're from out of this world.
So going from that to legalizing gay marriage, as you can see,
it'd be extremely but then like the baby would be, because fine, okay, she's pregnant, she moves to Oman, she gives birth to the baby. If she's on a British passport,
that's a different story. If she stays on a British passport, that's a whole different story. But having the baby here, no way. Giving birth to the baby here, no.
Even if she was on the British passport.
Because I've known people who have had British passports, were not married, but were having a baby and had to quickly go and get married. They had to present the marriage certificate so that they could get the birth certificate. They would would not get a birth certificate for their kid without one.
So what if they presented a marriage certificate from England that said it was 2 women? Can you imagine that scenario? Can you just imagine the person at the hospital has to issue that birth certificate?
I mean, you face difficulty having an Omani name and having a British passport.
Yeah, I know.
That was difficult enough for you at the border with the police. Can you imagine? It's so, no, it's just, at this stage, it's just laughable.
Yeah, no, all of it is.
Right now it's just laughable. It's not funny for people who actually have to go through it. I can appreciate that girl is really struggling.
Yeah, because
but it's conceptually we're so far away from it that it's not even.
Can't even go there. It's not even worth it. Like, even if you get past the legal fact, I think her biggest scenario is her family.
Yeah.
And like where her parents accept it, her grandmother doesn't know. And I mean, this girl's got tattoos and everything. And I remember for a while they used to tell their grandmother that they were henna. I was like, come on.
How long is it gonna last?
Yeah, like, and how good do you think this henna is? Every time she puts on the henna, it looks exactly the same. Yeah. So I think her grandma just turns a blind eye. But then, like, you know, it's like her grandma's sisters and brothers. But they all know. It's like they all know, just no one's going to say. And it's like, oh, like, live your life, but then you can't. Yeah, I'm glad I'm not in that situation.
Yeah, so normally people just get around living outside of the stereotypes or living outside of the confines of society by literally physically living away.
Yeah.
That's the only way they can get away with living the life that they want. But to bring that back here, maybe sometimes I feel like people don't really, they have a idealized image of what living back home is going to be like, you know? There are benefits to it. There's the comfort and safety of being around like your community and having everyone understand you, and you don't have to constantly like, funnily enough, no one, even though we're in Oman, which is surrounded by places where there are wars happening, I feel safe all the time. I never feel like I'm under threat, but when I go to the UK, I do feel unsafe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because
true.
It is a target for terrorist attacks, you know? And it's not just target for terrorism, like from what they call Islamist terrorists. There are people like the EDL and BNP and those. I don't know if they still exist, actually. So Alya is pretty cool. I liked her a lot. Like, her personality came through quite a bit. She's really funny. And
follow her on Instagram.
I follow her on Instagram. And after you recommended her, and she cracked me up in this book. Like, there was one scene that she talks about in her life where she when she was a kid and she liked a guy, and she kept on telling people that she likes him, and he came up to her later and he was like, can you stop telling people you like me, because you're ruining my reputation.
That's so sad. I don't think I've ever had that situation, but
first of all, she has guts to come out and write that in a book. It really is ballsy. Like, it's a ballsy thing to do. So it made me like her. You know,
when you look back, you're like, oh, well, I can say it now.
Because if I went through that, I would never live it down.
No, I wouldn't.
I wouldn't, like, if that happened to me when I was like 10 and thinking about it today, it would be something I would be mortified about. I don't know how she just...
Yeah, you'd just still be cringing at the time. I can't do it. I can't. Even like, didn't she write a letter to one of the guys that she was seeing or she liked?
Oh, that Moroccan guy.
Yeah, she wrote him a letter.
Or I think he was Moroccan, yeah.
See, even that, like, that's brave. I couldn't. Even just to think about it makes me cringe.
Even when I was a kid, I think I knew I was going to be a lawyer. I would never document anything.
God, yes. And there's evidence for later.
No, because I'll tell you why. There was a really big scandal when I was a kid where a guy had a relationship with a girl. They were teenagers. And he made her fall in love with him, but it was all an act. This is real. It happened here. And basically, he had like a feud with her older brother. I think that was a story that we were told. Most of their relationship basically just took place over the phone. They would just have long conversations, you know, teenagers just expressing themselves and whatever. And he recorded everything. Yeah. Oh, wow. And he recorded all these conversations that they had, and like basically released these tapes to everybody. Like he just sent them out to everyone. And this was like early 2000s. And I was like 14, I think, at the time, something like that. And I listened to them. Like, normally I wasn't in the circle of people that normally has access to this kind of gossip, but somehow even I received it, you know, and it was such a big scandal at the time. The girl, like, her family, like, nothing I hope nothing happened to her. Like, she didn't like get physically harmed or anything like that. That's not what the story that I heard, but she basically no longer had a social life after that. She was escorted to school, escorted back home. She just sits in the house. Nobody ever sees her. Nobody talks to her. She doesn't have any friends. That's so like, her family just completely like closed her off from society. And like, other than that, like, people at school would call her names, and like they just totally the annoying thing was nothing happened to him. The guy, nobody ever said what happened to him. Like, I don't know. I don't remember him facing any consequences, and it's so messed up. But that scarred me, like, as a kid.
Yeah.
Hearing that story, that really, really messed with my head, because I was like, if I ever try to get into a relationship, this might happen. This might all be a ruse to humiliate me. That was the message that I took from it. And that's why now, like, I look at girls now on social media, and in a way I kind of like it, that the fact that they're putting out their images and they're doing everything themselves, because nobody can shame them with it.
Yeah, that's
what I mean? It's like
they've already done it.
I've already done it myself, so it's fine.
Yeah.
But people have to be careful. So wrapping up, this was a good book. I'm really, really glad that you introduced me to it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I've introduced so many people. I was so excited because I think I called all of the girls I knew that had kind of grown up in England, were kind of Middle Eastern. And I told them, like, you need to read it. And they were like, oh, no, is it like another self-help book?
No, it's really not.
And I said, that's the best part. She's literally just giving you facts.
Yeah.
And her life experiences. And she's not telling you to go follow them. She's just telling you, this is how it is. Maybe you relate.
Yeah.
And everyone so far that I've recommended it to has related. And that's it's kind of a creepy thing.
Yeah, it is. You feel seen in a way. Like, that is just insane.
You kind of feel like you're not alone. And that sense in it is a greater freedom. Doesn't necessarily bring you out and feel as free, but it allows you to know, you can look through this book and go, okay, I'm not the only one, but what do I want to take from it, and how do I want to go about it?
Yeah. Earlier I was saying, like, does this need a whole, I was trying to play devil's advocate, obviously, but I do think that a book like this needs to be out there, because first of all, she makes a point that everybody has a story and each story is valid, and you can't always go around saying that for example, there is one type of Middle Eastern woman. Yeah. And that is X, Y, and Z. And her story has to go this way and that way. Because here is her story. She is a woman who has Middle Eastern heritage, grew up in the UK and all over the place. And this is her particular story. And people need to, like, see that. Even I didn't realize, I didn't realize how much I needed to read this. You know? And I wish I had something like this actually growing up. And she actually makes a reference to that about, I think more again about representation, like how many
did this.
How many girls wish they had someone like the women that are out there these days from the Middle East, going and achieving things, totally gone, like basically women who have decided for themselves what their life is going to be, whatever that may be. We constantly talk about, like, very, like, ambitious levels of goals, but some people just want to live a normal life. You know what I mean? Like, they just want to have a normal life, and it's fine as long as you choose it. I think that's her main point, is that she's trying to make. Yeah, I really respected that sort of approach that she had, because sometimes I feel like a lot of people who are vocal in this space are trying to push people towards being overly ambitious in a way that is not natural to them, and if you're not that way, if you're not the first female Muslim this and that, then it doesn't really matter, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Everyone's trying to fight to be that first.
Yeah, you know, and not everybody has that goal in life. Some people just want to live a normal everyday life, and other than this, have you been reading anything interesting?
So lately I haven't been reading anything interesting. I don't know, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts. How convenient. I've become a really big podcast person. I've only ever listened to one biography on a food podcast, which was Kevin Hart. It's the only one I would listen to, because he narrates it himself.
Oh, is it like his audiobook?
Yeah, and it's hilarious. Yeah, his audiobook.
Is it in a podcast format?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
no
it's
way.
And I remember I used listening to it constantly, because he breaks it up into each chapter and everything. But because he's narrating it himself, everything just comes to life, and you're just like laughing the whole way. But the only book that I always read it. I've read it probably now about 10 times at least, and I come back to it when I don't know what I'm doing with my life. It's called The Book of Joy. It's basically, so it's a book that was by Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. It's actually written by a Jewish journalist. So he went with them, and I think they went to visit the Dalai Lama. And I went to sit with him for 5 days, him and Desmond Tutu, and they were basically discussing the 5 fundamental things that make up joy. And it was really weird because, like, obviously one's a Buddhist, one's a devout Christian, and the other one was a Jewish. But they brought in all religions, and they all came down to the same facts about what the 5 ideas of happiness were. And I always go back. It's an amazing book because you get the characters, you see how the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu really are, and they really like love each other, and they're so warm. And just the conversations they have, you're just like, oh wow, I don't look at it that way. Like my favorite one that I always go back to in it is they talk about how we deal with something, about not having regret and not feeling bad about something. They were like, if someone dies, don't feel bad about it, because if that person, like I always put it into my example, like my dad died, but because of that book, I was like, actually, it's not a bad thing. He needed to die. No, he didn't. In the lesson,
I know what you mean.
He needed to die in order for me to become really close with my grandparents. So like my mother's father, my mother's uncle became like 2 parents. And if it wasn't for that, then all of my elder male cousins wouldn't have taken me on and acted like a father figure. You know, in order for one great thing to happen, you need these bad outcomes. So that was one of their fundamental things of joy. Yeah, it's an amazing book. It's purely them just having a discussion. Cool. It's almost like a written podcast in essence.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and it's really nice to see their views. And everyone I've given it to is like, wow, actually I needed that book. Yeah, it's a great book.
I'm definitely gonna look it up. Right now I'm on a completely different trajectory. I'm reading like totally different path from what you just mentioned, but I'm reading a very called Dead Girls.
Oh my god.
By Abigail Tarttelin, and it's about a girl who's like 11 years old, and she gets killed and she disappears and is found dead in her village in England, somewhere in Lincolnshire. And her best friend basically goes on a quest to find the killer, and she's like a super smart 11-year-old kid, and nobody thinks she can do it, but she's like determined to do it. And it's kind of nice. It's like a little twist on the traditional like thriller story, because normally it's seen through the eyes of like the lady who wrote it, Abigail Tarttelin. I hope I'm saying her name right, but she's a very like, she has a very specific reason for wanting to write this book in that perspective, because she says that a lot of thrillers and stories like this are always written in the eyes of like the detectives, usually male, you know, and even though the victims are always women and younger people, and she wanted to give more of a voice to like the actual girls who were the victims. And so I like that kind of aspect of it, but it's so spooky. Like,
oh, I don't know if I could get into it.
Yeah,
I can't do stories.
It's one of those books that once you read it, you can't put it down. I had to like psych myself up to open it, because I knew I was getting into a world. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah. So,
I wish I could do stories. I can't read stories too much.
That's the thing, you think you can, but when you open it,
then you get into it.
You get into it, and then that's what I remembered when I opened this. It's been a long time since I read a story. Actually, I spent so long reading books like this and other things, and I forgot what it was like to just read a good chunky story.
It's true, but stories you don't put down, whereas books like this you can come back to it later.
Yeah,
you know, you finish that, you need to absorb what you've just read.
Yeah, and like now I'm already like thinking throughout the day. I was like, I need to figure out like a pocket of like a good hour where I can just sit with that book and just read it. Like, I love that feeling. You know what I mean? I don't normally get that with other books.
Yeah, it's true. Stories do give you that, because you let your imagination run wild.
Yeah.
That's a nice thing.
But it is spooky, I have to say. It was really scary. You also have a little book out, actually. An ebook.
Yeah, I just started them.
Yeah. Oh, it's a series.
Yes, I'm doing it as a little series. So I've been doing little ones. It was people around me actually that were forcing me into it.
Yeah, you should.
They were like, Dina, you need to do it, because there are loads of recipes that people really just don't know about. And it's just like, you know, you should offer them as an ebook. Don't just post them. And you need to kind of go against that vibe. So I started doing them because actually I'm trying to collect loads of them together so that I can eventually have just one big book
of Omani recipes.
Yeah, Omani, and then I want to do one of Zanzibari recipes. So I've got one at the moment that's like Omani inspired desserts. None of them are actually Omani desserts, but they're all using the flavors and things like that. Then I've done one for my kanafolis. My kanafa cannolis, and that's just like a single recipe by itself. I just recently did one of my kabuli that I did, and again it's another single recipe, but I've noticed people really like that one because I make them really detailed. So it's almost like 4 pages but just of one recipe. Okay. And lots of pictures and things like that. But I'm trying to compile a list, like lots of them, so I'm putting them online, and then eventually hopefully I'll have one big one.
And if people want to get that, where can they go?
They can go to dinewithdina.co.uk.
Oh my god. For
Next
you?
time we should talk about a food book.
Yeah, we
and
should
then
actually.
do
There are
that.
so many. We should do
Yeah.
like
So many.
I don't even know where to begin. I would genuinely do an episode on a cookbook.
And actually, a lot of cookbooks have stories.
Yeah.
That's one of my things. I think I like them when they put a story in them.
Yeah. So yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that. Maybe when
Yeah.
your book comes out.
Yeah, hopefully that's the plan.
Yeah.
It's actually for a publisher. So
That's so
hopefully I'll
crazy.
have a nice Almighty cookbook out next year.
Oh my god.
Send you a copy.
I know.
You have to
We
review
could do
it.
like a cooking